Some cultures do it, some don't. Some countries allow it, and in others it's illegal. The ones which don't permit it usually claim it to be too morbid a practice or that it's a safety hazard, although I suspect their reasoning has more to do with state property rights than anything else. I'm talking about roadside memorials. Out here it's a constant and ubiquitous reminder that every trip might just be your last. From simple flowers and candles at the scene of a mortal accident to elaborately constructed cenotaphs remembering those tragically lost on the road. I've even seen car wheels bolted to trees with a photo of the deceased tacked on as an impromptu shrine. Around the time of All Saints' Day, November the 1st, these shrines, which are seemingly everywhere, flicker eerily with remembrance candles as I drive the roads of the Carpathian Mountains. At night their guttering lights can be seen all around, reminding me that I might not be alone on the road. It was the beginning of winter and I had to visit a client in a small town in the foothills of the Tatra Mountains. The temperature dropped way below zero during the night, and as my 2-hour drive started early in the morning, I had to pay attention to patches of ice on the pothole Backroad, which wound its way from east to west along the northern border of the country. As it was a Saturday, the traffic wasn't too bad. Most trucks were banned from driving during weekends back then, unless they were carrying perishable goods. My biggest concern when driving through the hills was coming up behind a logging truck, as they are so long and slow that it's almost impossible to overtake them. There's no safe way to do so before there's another blind bend, and I never know what might be coming towards me on the other side of the road. I'm not saying I never do it, overtake logging trucks I mean. It just usually depends on how much coffee I've had, what mood I'm in, or if Ministry's Jesus Built My Hot Rod is playing on my car stereo. It also depends heavily on what car I'm driving. The hill roads here either pass through very long villages or through endless swathes of forest. The closer you get to the Tatra Mountains, the steeper the hills become, and the forest changes from deciduous to mixed woodland to completely coniferous. True bear country. That winter I'd just gotten rid of my old BMW due to it being an extremely unreliable money pit, and was driving a much smaller engined, almost no powered Renault. Overtaking was a thing of fantasy, especially uphill. There just wasn't enough juice in the car to risk it without a good half-mile run-up. I passed through the village of H and took the double back bend to begin climbing the hill out of it. The hill is extremely twisty, and with the zero run-up the first double back offers, requires a lot of revs and third gear tops for about 1.5 miles upwards. Sure, there are cars which can power their way up it, but the average car really struggles. On a plus side, it allowed me time to view the creepy abandoned Jewish cemetery which sits alone in a field on a slope a couple of 100 feet to my right. I can't even begin to explain just how out of place that fenced-in graveyard looks. Hell, even the wooden fence is falling to pieces. I crested the hill and put the car into fourth. I've never liked driving automatic, so I apologise for those who aren't used to stick shifts and can't understand the context. The road curved again and descended. In the distance I could see a castle atop its peak above the town. It looked fairy tale-like, with its own band of clouds slightly obscuring its walls. In front of me was what I dreaded seeing. An immense logging truck with a long front section and an even longer rear trailer. In front of that was another truck, some Polish articulated. Both had their air brakes on full as the bottom of the hill saw another sharp bend from which the road would climb again. As it were, both were crawling anyway. There was a stretch after that point, a bit more than half a mile, which was clear of traffic in both directions. My stomach lurched and I felt that familiar tingling in my palms. I would have one chance to overtake, and it would need to be both of them. I would have to time it perfectly well so that as soon as I'd cleared the bend at the bottom of the hill and swung around to begin climbing, I'd have to pull out into the oncoming lane and floor the accelerator. and prayed that the little Renault would give me all she had. The road ahead, aside from the two behemoths before me, was completely clear. There were no side roads, or junctions, or stopping places to worry about. All I had to concern me was whether the Renault could defy the laws of physics and act like a real car. As luck would have it, Onyx and Biohazard's Judgment Night began playing on the stereo, so I turned up the volume and got ready for my chance. I cleared the bend and floored it. Unlike with the BMW, the Renault just didn't have the woomph. It was accelerating, but there was definitely no G-force involved. I felt my body rocking as though willing the car to pick up speed. I was on the wrong side of the road, climbing, and only at quarter the length of the logging truck. Come on, come on, come on! To my left was thick pine forest, and on my right was billowing diesel smoke from the struggling truck. I cursed as I saw the gap had widened between the two trucks, but nowhere near enough for me to squeeze between them. I'd become so focused on willing that gap to open that I hadn't noticed a dirty, dark blue mid-sized car appear at the top of the hill some distance ahead of me, coming at an alarming speed in my direction. I had mere seconds to act before we collided. I calculated the odds of me making not just one truck but both, as there was no sign of the gap opening, and then, in a flash, I panicked and gave up on the whole idea. I slammed on the brakes so that I could fall back in behind the logging truck. My adrenaline must have kicked in and given me a short burst of driving ability and reasoning, as I'd managed to calculate the speed of the oncoming blue car and the time it would take me to slow down my own and get back onto the correct side of the road, albeit behind a cloud of diesel fumes and falling wood fragments. I felt sick from the close call, yet I still toyed with the idea of trying again when the blue car had passed. So I waited. And I waited. Something felt seriously wrong. The blue car should have passed by me by then. As the logging truck was blocking my view, I carefully edged my over to the left so I could see around her, worrying that the blue car might at that moment pass by and hit me. As I crossed the central line, I was stunned to see a completely empty road. On my side, there were still two lumbering trucks trying to climb the hill, but in the oncoming lane, there was nothing. No blue car. I slid my car back behind the logging truck and felt as though reality had just taken a day trip. Where the hell had the car gone? At the speed our little convoy made its way up the hill and over it, I had plenty of time to examine the forest edge for dirt roads or turnings. There were none. Plus, at the speed the blue car had been travelling, taking a sharp turn in icy conditions would have been a fatal mistake. Where the hell was it? And then I saw the shrine. On the grass verge, between the forest and the road, at the top of the hill, there was a small, homemade wooden cross. Several wreaths had been hung over it, or placed at its base, and many candles in different coloured pots burned dully in the early morning light. The cross was new, and I knew, deep, deep within my gut, that it had been recently placed there in memory of the driver of a dirty, dark blue, mid-sized car. I've had several near misses and close calls with cars, motorbikes and trucks over the years. Driving here can be quite hazardous. Having them vanish just before impact, however, is just something that I've never gotten used to. Mist is a constant in my region. In winter we can go weeks without seeing the sun, either because of thick low cloud cover or because of mist hovering above the ground. It rains often here, with spectacular, spontaneous lightning storms in the hotter months and flooding in the spring and autumn. In the colder months we get heavy snowfall and dense ice, so water features heavily in our daily lives. Because of this, rivers spill over their banks and roads become impassable, sometimes even washed away. The ground is often muddy, save for a couple of months in the summer when it is parched and dry due to the incredible heat. Driving, especially on the unmarked country roads, can be scary, as dense yellowish fog envelops you, and you have to rely on your wits to guess when the next bend or oncoming vehicle will appear. But the Carpathians wouldn't be the Carpathians without the mist and fog. The sheer amount of forest guarantees the production of water vapour, and often it appears that the forest itself is breathing, or crying. It adds a mystical, sometimes creepy gravitas to the stunning scenery. Inside the woods, the ground is usually damp and slippery, and fungi of all types and description are abundant. Fallen trees and last year's leaves lie rotting all around, and the mist hides 1,000 unknowns. A few years ago, I'd been working regularly in a fairly large town, some 2 hours' drive from where I live. 3 times a week I'd finish at 7 or 8 p.m. and drive back on tiny remote bush roads through the most incredible countryside. I generally spend the drive either speaking into a dictaphone to make notes for a new book I was writing, or I'd listen to audiobooks on the car stereo. There was a long stretch of the road with no habitation, about 20 odd miles of it. This was the most beautiful part of the journey, as the road followed the length of Lake D and then passed directly through a large forest at the base of the hill, which holds the ruins of the Blood Countess, Elizabeth Bathory's first castle. It's mostly a beech forest, and the trees have grown thick, immensely tall and straight. It was late springtime, and the forest was carpeted in the luscious green of wild garlic, and the scent was all-pervasive. On the way to work, I'd been mesmerised by the smell and the stark contrast of the green, as they hadn't yet leaved after winter. Winter is hardcore out here, and drags on, so the little signs of spring, the wild garlic, the marigolds, the return of the cuckoo and stork, really lighten the mood and help shake off the universally felt depression that hangs over everyone after 5 months of a bleak, cold and dark season. As such, I was looking forward to my drive home and was hoping to take photographs of the sunset over the lake if I didn't reach it too late. I hadn't factored in the fog. Whether due to inversion or the still snow-sodden ground evaporating, as the Carpathians began to warm up, I quickly found myself driving through a thick, tainted wall of off-white. For the first few miles I could still manage a decent speed, but by the time I'd entered the forest road I was down to a crawl. I switched off my stereo and heater and wound down my window. I couldn't rely on my eyes for navigation or to predict problems. I needed to hear what might be ahead. A few hundred meters in and I was literally down to a couple of miles an hour. My headlights were just reflecting back at me and I could see little more than a couple of feet of road. I wanted to stop and pull over, but didn't dare risk another vehicle coming from behind smashing into me, so I kept on driving. Time dragged and my heart was racing. I couldn't see anything. I could smell the wild garlic strongly and my face was damp from the mist which had penetrated my car. And then I saw it. I have no idea how I hadn't noticed it before. An immense wild boar was trotting next to my driver's side window. Steam rose from its matted, dirty, spiky black hair. Its stench intermingled with that of the garlic. I kept on driving and it matched me. I was petrified. It was huge. My major concern was that it would suddenly decide to charge or leap at my car. I was trying to keep my eyes on the non-existent road in front, while simultaneously monitoring this prehistoric beast running shotgun. The whole scene was just unthinkable. My brain couldn't deal with it. I couldn't accelerate, I couldn't stop. I seriously didn't want to scare the boar, as I've seen what damage they can do. My old bull mastiff bore the deep battle scars across its rear legs and hindquarters from a run-in with one whilst guarding cattle. I really didn't want to be in a wrecked car in thick fog on a windy bush road on a steep hill in a forest in the arse end of nowhere. It was just one of those situations which I'd never even considered, so I had no plan B. And then it vanished. I took my eyes off the bore for a moment to make sure my car wasn't heading towards a gully or a tree, and it ceased to be. After quickly checking it wasn't in front of me, I let out an extremely long sigh of relief. I hadn't realised I'd been holding my breath. I kept driving slowly, more puzzled than anything, until I eventually reached the end of the forest and the fog began to lift. Tendrils and swathes of mist still clung to the road and the vegetation, giving the area an otherworldly feel, but it was good enough to drive through. I was in half a mind to stop the car, get out and just take a breather, but I decided to press on and speed up a little, still hoping to catch the sunset, although that wasn't looking likely as twilight had already begun to take hold. The next stretch of road was long and straight and was bordered on both sides by meadows filled with long spring grass and colourful flowers. There was a village a few miles up ahead. My brain was still processing the boar incident and the panic I'd felt in the fog when I saw something which really, truly couldn't exist. What's more, it saw me. At first I thought it was an animal. It broke through the tall grass on the left-hand side of the road, 100 feet or so in front of me, and made a dash to cross the road towards the right. I slammed on my brakes as I had no wish to hit whatever it was. And again, my brain just couldn't process what it was seeing. It was a little man, dark or black, sprinting on 2 legs. As my car came to a full stop, the smell of tyre rubber filling the air, the creature, or man, reached the middle of the road and stopped too. It faced me, its body square on. Its stance looked angry, defiant. I could see its upper body moving up and down as though it were panting or breathing deeply. Its minuscule legs were spaced shoulder width apart. Its knees were slightly bent and its arms hung bent down by its sides as though clenching its fists. And then it bolted back in the direction from which it had come, back to the left, where it disappeared in amongst the tall grass. I sat there with the engine running, stumped. My eyes were telling me what I'd seen, but my brain was telling me that it was an impossibility. The creature was, at most, a foot tall. It was blacker than any shadow, yet was definitely physical and tangible. Its skin had reflected the water on the road and the meagre light. I hadn't made out any features, but it had definitely been the shape of a tiny, well-proportioned man. It hadn't been wearing clothes and was uniformly black all over. I say man, but only because of its physicality, not because of anything else obvious about it. Over the years I've heard many tales of the little people, in several countries I've visited. However, what I saw was just too dark to easily fit into the myths. I've seen things while out in the forest, little holes in the base of trees which look like they're taken care of, as though they were a home rather than a burrow. I've seen logs which have sections that resembled miniature furniture, and, on occasion, I've heard what sound like tiny whispers. That creature, though, I've no idea to which branch of legend it belonged. Our encounter shocked it just as much as me. Maybe its place isn't above ground, but far below it. Whether it was because of the mist or because it was the right time of year, the boundary between our world and another, much older, one opened that evening and gave me a glimpse of what lies beyond. Every time I pass that stretch of road, I slow down in expectation. Maybe someday I will see it again. I just know that there is a very, very old belief that it's better not to see things, because then they notice you and they remember.
As always, be free.